Frameworks, ethical guidelines, and technical standards can support innovation while ensuring transparency, safety, and accountability across the AI ecosystem. The most exciting goal of AI NoES Horizon QI session is to bring Europe AI Network of Excellence closer to the citizens through live one-hour sessions. These open webinar formats allow you to learn about the goals, activities, and key research areas of different projects participating in each session, enabling the public to discover the broad European network by engaging directly with experts, leaders, and participants. Now, I am delighted to introduce our distinguished speaker for today. Lauren from NoLeFa, Antonino from EUSAiR, Sandra from ELSA, Sabrina from ENFIELD, and Kurt from dAIEDGE. Our speakers will now briefly share their contributions and the details of their projects before we open the dialogue to address the questions received during the dissemination phase of the event. Now, without further ado, we will begin with the first presentation. Remember, you only have 5 minutes to make the presentation. Laura, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I've not planned to share any slides, but give some background on where I'm coming from and where the project is trying to go in itself. So I'm Laurent Romary. I'm a researcher in computational linguistics and digital humanities for many years, and I'm also in charge of the open science policy in my institution, which is INRIA, the French National Research Institution in Computer Science, and I'm the new coordinator of the NoLeFa project. So NoLeFa aims, the actual name is NoLeFa 84 because it aims at implementing Article 84 of the AI Act, which intends to set in place a union testing facility that is a single coordination object, let us call it that way, at European level to coordinate the activities in the various EU countries concerning AI system testing. And AI system testing are supposed to be operated through autorités de surveillance de marché, market surveillance authorities in each of the EU country, which are in the process of being designed currently. And the important thing about the NoLeFa project is that it's really a multidisciplinary project in the sense that it has to combine legal expertise to understand the intricacies of the AI Act, technical expertise from the point of view of standardization, because we do contribute to the various standards which are supposed to, and maybe we'll discuss that during the exchanges, to accompany the AI Act at sense and elect level, so-called harmonized standards. And finally, very IT-oriented technical expertise, as we need to provide a kind of proof of concept of what a testing platform and testing modules for AI system would be, that could be used by the union testing facility at the end of the day. Final thing, I mentioned the union testing facility as an object, because part of the work we have to carry out in NoLeFa is to design the possible legal structures, the possible organization of a future AI union testing facility that would implement all the requirements of the AI Act. That's what I could say at this time of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Antonino, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm coordinator. I'm working at the University of Bologna in Italy, also part of the National Center of High Performance Computing based on Leonardo supercomputer, so basically the AI factory, Italian AI factory. And I'm supervising them, all the regulatory aspects. As EUSAiR, EUSAiR is a twin project of NoLeFa. I said that they went out at the same time. So EUSAiR is a CSA working on the supporting the member states and the European Commission for the sandboxing. So we basically work on the establishment of sandboxes. So Article 57 and following articles. So we work with all member states, so the 27 member states, all authorities, market surveillance and notifying authority, because the sandboxes are supposed to be established by both AI authorities as far as AI Act is concerned. And we work on all the 27 member states because sandboxes will be established by the beginning of August 26. This deadline was not touched by the digital omnibus proposal. So still sandbox will start in August 26, so it's around the corner. And the process is ongoing. What we do is we work with the member state. We develop templates, methods, procedures, workflows. But also now running a number of pilots with member states authorities and also providers. We have in the pipeline 90 use cases and pilots to be concluded by the end of April, May probably, with the idea to share with the member states and the national competent authorities through the participation of the iBoard, a good bunch of use cases with all regulatory challenges solved. The final thing I can say is that as soon as we are working with regulators on use cases, I mean, those who are familiar with AI technology and regulation know it very well, that there is a lot of learning process at the moment. And in fact, it's very difficult to say this regulatory challenge is already solved. You discover case by case that different issues are rising, especially if you move from one sector to other sector. And that's an ongoing process of EUSAiR. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonino. Sandra, please.
Yes, I have prepared a few slides. As always, now the fun process of can you see my screen will start. There we go. Can you see my first slide, everybody? Great. Thank you for giving me the stage. I am Sandra. I am here to represent ELSA, the European Lighthouse on Secure and Safe AI. The ELSA is a network of excellence that was funded under Horizon Europe in 2022. And we focus on foundational research and secure and safe AI methodology. Quick introduction of myself. My name is Sandra. As I said, I work at CISPA, Helmholtz Center for Information Security in Germany, and I am the ELSA communication manager. So from my side, you hear a little bit more about the communication around the topic. Brief introduction of ELSA, as I said, funded in 2022 by 26 founding members coming from both academia and industry. ELSA got an extension, and so the project will work until the end of August this year. During the project duration or the network duration, we also expanded the network, and we have now 43 network partners and members and associated partners, over 270 research publications relate to ELSA, and a big part of ELSA is our industry calls. We did 2, and through them we could support 13 SMEs and startups. ELSA research or methodology research addresses 3 grand challenges. They are robustness, guarantees, and certification, private and robust collaborative learning at scale, and human-in-the-loop decision-making. We addressed them in our 6 use cases that again are led by academia and industry together, because for ELSA it's also important to connect the theoretic foundational research to then real world use and application in industry. And as you can see, all of our use cases address either 1 or sometimes even 2 of those grand challenges. And that's it for a very brief presentation of ELSA. Where do I stop the share? There we go.
Thank you, Sandra. Well, Sabrina, can you tell us about ENFIELD, please?
Yes, I also have prepared a few slides that I will share with you to do this way more smoothly than what I did. Today I am representing the ENFIELD project with my colleague Astrid Smal. We work as European project managers for Majoli Group, which is an Italian company. And in the ENFIELD project, we are leading the work package on exploitation, standardization, and policymaking. So ENFIELD stands for European Lighthouse to Manifest Trustworthy and Green AI. The project started in September 2023 and is going to end in August 2026. So we are now in the final phase of the project. The consortium is made up of 30 partners coming from both academia and industry and from 18 different countries. This is to give an overview of the organizations being part of our consortium. ENFIELD aims to create a European Center of Excellence, contributing to advancing research in AI across industrial sectors like healthcare, energy, manufacturing, and space. ENFIELD also aims to promote collaboration among a wide variety of stakeholders, from researchers to policymakers and industry stakeholders. And finally, ENFIELD will contribute to policy development and regulation at European level, specifically by providing policymakers with a set of recommendations that will be made available in a white paper by the end of the project. As far as its application domains are concerned, ENFIELD research activities are focused on 4 industrial domains, as mentioned, so healthcare, energy, manufacturing, and space, which are interconnected with 4 pillars of AI: adaptive, green, human-centric, and trustworthy. And the interconnection between these pillars and these domains creates innovative and concrete use cases where our technical partners conduct their research. And as an outcome of these research activities, we have numerous key results, namely enhanced AI technologies, datasets, domain-specific AI products, policies, standards, and guidelines, and training material. All this content is made available on our ENFIELD portal, which is a dedicated platform where we include all the material that we have been working on throughout these almost 3 years of project activity. That was a very brief overview. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, all of you. And now, Kurt, please tell us about dAIEDGE.
Yes, very warm welcome. My name is Kurt. I'm part of the dAIEDGE project, and I also would like to share some of my slides. So let's do this here. Very warm welcome also from my side. I'm part of the dAIEDGE project. I have not so much information purely on the dAIEDGE project, but I guess you know the project already. dAIEDGE is a project. We have about 30 plus members from industry and academia. Our main focus is to develop AI for the edge, for example, distributed AI at the edge, and we have a very technological focus. We are looking very much as AI training, as hardware support, and this under the constraints of the edge or the deep edge, where we have very limited resource capabilities, where we need high visualization capabilities, where we need very accurate AI models really to work on this. My approach for today is a little bit different. It's a little bit more kind of bottom-up approach. Why? We recently have completed some work on digital sovereignty for this collaborative AI engineering. And what I see here, can eventually complement and outline how the research into these kind of standards and compliance can try to be deeper integrated in the daily work, not only as an outcome, but also eventually also in an early inclusion in these projects. This work is based on a recent publication which just was accepted, and it's part of our work here in dAIEDGE, and it's about digital sovereignty for collaborative AI engineering. We wanted to identify really we wanted to survey and to structure and to highlight to explain the main concepts, the regulation and standards, and the technology, especially the technologies which are available for this kind of what we call digital sovereignty in the context of AI development. Digital sovereignty as independence, and we didn't expect that this term right now is really becoming maybe a little bit overheated. So I apologize if we are using this kind of buzzword here once again. So what our rationale here for this digital sovereignty? We see that these AI models are computationally very demanding. They are very large eventually. They are complex to develop. The development processes are very complex. And we need these, or they are enabled by these tremendous hard and software architectures, which are very often very centralized. And the governance is sometimes easy, but also sometimes very difficult to establish, especially assuming this kind of centralized approach. So basically what we have done here also already for a couple of years in a number of projects, we looked in the projects leading even up to dAIEDGE to develop a distributed environment, a distributed VLab, and that's what we are currently developing also in dAIEDGE, to facilitate a collaborative engineering process for these AI at and for the edge. You know, we have even this processing at the edge and the development at the edge and for the edge capabilities. And this VLab will be one of the key output of dAIEDGE and enables especially experts and specialists to develop their very targeted environments. And our aim was to enable this kind of collaboration of experts and specialists. And as we think, this is very typical for the European ecosystem of SMEs. In Europe, we don't have these big usually very often have not these big companies. We have these small SMEs, and we have also a very localized governance. We have here specializations, and I think in Europe we can be proud of these kind of localized governance, because I think this is something for the people which we would like to have here. This resulted into a process which we are implementing into the VLab, and you see the process here also a little bit on the left. If you would like to go a little bit deeper, then you can check out our publications on this. So, but what it requires, if we would like to go into this kind of collaborative engineering process, we need the independence and the independent stakeholders. So the models, the data, the algorithms are assets, and their usage needs to be controlled by the local stakeholders. And how can we do this? And this is what we are saying. How can a sovereign and trustful European collaboration for AI engineering here under these requirements be achieved? We looked at this, what can be considered for digital sovereignty here. We see as that we have different dimensions. We have a technological dimension, we have a legislative dimension, and we have a standard dimension. And here you see some of the key achievements about this. If you look at the technological dimensions, we have trusted execution environments, federated learning, what we have already seen here. Legislative dimensions, we start even very early with the German Federal Data Protection Act. We see that we have, of course, the GDPR, European's GDPR regulation in 2016, and now the EU AI Act. On the other side, we need now to look at where are standards emerging and how this is related to technology, so that we have digital property rights language, which is here, that we have permission distributed ledgers here, and kind of technologies which enable and which are standards which we would like to do this. So if we would like to structure digital sovereignty, we see here three main areas here for digital sovereignty: data sovereignty, that we have data regions; information sovereignty; algorithmic sovereignty; operational sovereignty, about access, about the transparency of the process, the control here in this way; or software sovereignty, that we have software and hardware sovereignty, that we have an open, understandable infrastructure which is resilient, survivability, and also that we have here some cloud activities. This is where we are looking at. And now the question is, how can we if we have this kind of understanding, how can we turn this into standardization activities? And maybe even what we learned here out of our project, that we need future standardization action plans. And that is something we should address eventually, even as a sustainable outcome out of this project in this way. Great. Thanks a lot. A little bit of input from my side. Thank you. Looking
Thank you,
forward.
Kurt. And thank you all for adhering to the schedule. And now we start with the first topic of this morning, influences of policy and standards on communication. And the question is, how do AI policy developments at the European level influences the way European networks of excellence communicate about its work on AI standards?
Do you mind if I say something?
Okay.
Thank you. I think these developments on such a European level add an interesting layer to our work as communication managers, because it means that we always have to keep up to date with the discussions, like, for example, the discussions and the deployment of the EUSAiR Act. And all these discussions and the decisions as well add requirements to research in AI, both in a negative and a positive way. But this is why we also have to always keep up to date with them. And I think there's also two ways to interact with them. The first one for me as a communication manager is very easy to, it's not that easy, but it's obvious. Stay informed about the debates that are going on, use different channels and different ways that the policy developments are being broadcasted through, to also pick up the debates in social media, press, in several papers, and join them, decide to actively join the discussions, and also share how our network of excellence and our researchers and our use cases, or the projects that we've seen, address the challenges that are currently being debated. So we have to be proactive, we have to share our point of view, we have to share the work that we are conducting to help them make informed decisions. And I also think that as communication manager, we need to pick up these conversations ourselves and proactively start conversations, reach out to policymakers directly. And in my role, I would say also connect them to our researchers in the network, connect them to the institutions, and to create a bridge between what is going on in the research networks and what policymakers are talking about, so they can make informed decisions, and their worries or their concerns, their information, their experience can also be mirrored by what our researchers are doing within networks, and also the findings that we have in our networks being shared with policymakers. So they have the broad picture. That is what I think is the impact of the discussions on our communication. I don't know what the other thing.
Maybe I could mention a difficulty there, which is we've got a stable background with the AI Act, about which we can communicate, of course. But on the standardization side, this is by far more complex, because standardization is a slow and lengthy process. A lot of the documents which are being discussed are not publicly available during the discussion phases, and not until publication. And so when you discuss with, for instance, potential market surveillance authorities, you cannot speak completely about the details on how they are going to be able to implement the AI Act, for instance, in terms of available tasks, the available metrics in the various domains, because this is still in discussion. And of course, this is one of the issues with the AI Act, that it relies on those harmonized standards at SENS and ELEC in order to provide the complete technical background. And so communication is made very difficult. We can sometimes just be elusive about what's going on for domains which are still under standardization. Standardization has been delayed for many reasons that we may also discuss here if needed. But this really impact on our capacity to fully communicate publicly, but also with special agencies.
Yeah, I join here. I like very much also Sandra's statement here. What I observe is that I think the involvement of companies and is really very important here on the one side. And I think the aim of standards is always to enable kind of technical collaborations on one side. I'm coming a bit out of the telecommunication systems area, where we need standards to be able to interconnect different technologies, but which are in the end aim at a similar objective. And what I observe is the same also what Laurent highlights. We have, of course, a problem that standardization is very often post-research. That it is that we are doing activities, and later on we would like to fix this into interfaces, into interwork with other technical areas. What I maybe see out of my technique, because what we had the problem, the challenge is, we see on the one side that there are policymakers out there, and they look at very important societal objectives, but the interconnection to what is technologically feasible and how this can be in the end implemented is still less researched. That is what we observed in some of the ways, that if a researcher comes in and says, okay, how can we now interconnect our research work, our technical development work with these objectives, there's still a kind of process in between, and that needs to strengthen. Or I believe the strengthening could be out of these kind of strong collaborations between these players, these stakeholders like companies. And this is for me the society which is on, and of course also the end users, which is needed here. Thanks a lot. I guess I can say something myself. So very quickly, first, I mean, I share with Laurent more or less the same issues. We are working our main, well, not main, but our main clients are especially member states and authorities. So here I share the same thing. One thing I think is important in terms of communication is to contribute to explain what are the right expectations from standards, right? That's a super important point, because you see a very polarized discussion, especially in the policy debate. So some are expecting a lot from standards. So standards will solve all. I'm talking about harmonized standards, right? They will solve everything. Some say, well, we don't know. Yeah. So it's very important that a research effort on standards clarify and also contribute to clarifying, also, especially to policymakers. And I'm talking about national policymakers, but also European policymakers, what standards can do, right? Of course, there is a difficulty, what was mentioned by all of you, that, we don't have yet all the harmonized standards in place. But in fact, it's very important that we explain how they work, right? And how they can be, what they can do. And that's a communication issue from the research community that should be put in place. That's crucial, because much of the misunderstandings that happened so far, I would say a lot depends on the fact that there was an overestimation of the role of standards and how they work.
Thank you. And now we are going to the second question. Well, based on the research happening in your network, what do you see as the key message that communicators should convey to ensure AI standards support safe, secure, trustworthy, and policy-aligned in AI in Europe?
I can start myself if you want. I didn't raise the hand, but I can start myself and just bringing the perspective of sandboxes. Okay. I think that is important from the sandboxing perspective, that was very much discussed in our member state, is the fact that standards, even they have a specific, from the regulatory perspective, they have a specific role in the AI Act, right? So it's clearly defined what they are expected to do. Still, they provide some methods, metrics, heuristics that are, say, a language, right? Sort of a language that should be spoken in all the pipeline of the development of the AI. So, for example, the sandboxing, even though sandboxes are in clearly the pre-market phase, right? They are instrument for fostering innovation in the pre-market phase. Now there is discussion of using them in sandboxes because sandboxes are supposed to be accelerator of conformity assessment. This is written in Article 57, right? Acceleration of a conformity assessment. So quite clearly, even though formally standards have a different role, they should be a sort of common jargon used also in the pre-market phase. And that's, I think, a very important message to be conveyed in order to make sure that we develop properly AI technology in Europe. So that's my comment.
If I can jump on what you just said. So basically what I think it's important that we convey is the message that by adopting clear and informed legislation, also based on practical information, so really based and informed by research, we can ensure safer and more trustworthy AI, because as we mentioned before, the debate is quite polarized. The political debate is quite polarized. So there must not be a debate that is based on AI is the enemy or AI is the savior. Like, we should help legislation go towards narrative where AI can truly be helpful, but it must be regulated so that it does not go out of our control, let's say. That is our view. I don't know if someone wants to add something else.
Okay, Sandra, sí.
Yeah, but then Laurent unmuted himself, and I didn't want to take over Laurent.
Go, Sandra. So, and I come afterwards. I remember my point. Go on.
Thank you. I totally agree to what Sabrina just said. It's so important to not just create a standard far away from industry and the real world use and the real usage of then eventually the algorithms and the models. It needs to be connected. Each side needs to get and gather information from each other. And I thought that was a very important point that Sabrina made.
Yeah, since I did the same for the first question, I can point to some difficulties when you consider national authorities in charge of testing AI system. They've got shall I say, large spectrum of expertise, to be politically correct, with some very deep into the technicalities of AI and others who are more at the political or administrative level. And part of the job we are trying to carry out within NoLeFa is to do a lot of multi-level training activities. So we've designed a whole training curriculum so that you can both have access to basic introduction to AI, because this is sometimes needed with the national interlocutors we have, down to the precise description of metrics that can be used to for instance, carry out bias testing in AI system. So this is a major issue. We cannot have a kind of a coherent communication training strategy at European level for all the countries, depending on who has been appointed as market surveillance authority.
Okay, the next question is, how do you ensure that complex research outcomes relate to AI policy and standards are communicated clearly to policymakers, industry, and the wider public?
Maybe I can try to take this one by just an example from the French environment, not NoLeFa specifically. And one of the difficulties is to put together AI researchers, AI practitioners, and policymakers in the same room. On the French side, there's been this initiative called ENFIELD, which is a single institute grouping together the major actors in the domain of AI safety and AI testing, where we do have that. So there is some specific funding for research projects, research activities, but at the same time contributions to the development of a national platform for AI testing, for instance. So I think the states have a role to play in this domain.
If I can just add to what was just discussed at the moment, like considering the complexity in the research aspect, what we try to do in ENFIELD is we try to translate the technical findings into more concise policy briefs in form of white papers or maybe like visual aids, maybe kind of a diagram or a KPI, like a dashboard KPI to understand exactly how the technical findings or the data set that we have generated through the couple of years, 3 years of research has a proper mechanism, or let's say it bolsters the policy framework. And of course, just the policy framework can't be a clap can't happen with one hand. It has to be with two hands. So with the policy framework, we try to curate our audiences in such a way that be it the industrialists or the universities or the academia sector, the policies are meant to be targeted to such audiences, which increases the societal relevance as well as the transparency for the use of AI. That's our take on the complexity of the research outcomes and how we can relate to the AI policies.
If I reflect on this, isn't that we, on the one side, need to look at what kind of compliance we see on standards? And of course, these standards are eventually limited in some way. Maybe some of the standards are very technological oriented, interoperability standards, communication network standards, data structure standards, very, very. And on the other side, I think especially with AI, we are creating future standard requirements. So think about, I think this is something which we all also learn, especially from dAIEDGE, that bringing AI to the edge becomes making AI more immersive into our processes. And I think that is eventually not yet fully understood, but on the other side, something which is expected from the outside. If we talk about the word standard, that means already eventually people assume with this a kind of quality standard, high quality standard, and as Laurent eventually already said, there is an extreme expectation, and sometimes eventually we cannot even match this as engineers, that we live up to these expectations, and eventually we even would like to push the expectations, or to frame the expectations in the right context. And definitely we need here this communication on what are the expectations on the standards, and what can we obtain here and bring this into account. But I think we need here even to split between what can we fulfill right now and what could we fulfill in the future in some way.
Well, focusing our attention on challenge on collaboration in standardization and policies. In that ways, do you see opportunity for collaboration between different projects to create more unified voice for policy recommendations?
Okay, I promise I'll shut up for the next question. But I mean, listening to all the initial presentations, the interesting thing I saw is that we all have use cases on our plate, and there will be a time where we need to compare the various use cases, how they impact on the way we want to test AI systems, and how they can provide actual systems that we could pull together in this sharing of experience that we'll have to do. So the use cases are for me a quite important topic, because also each of the projects seems to be very good in specific domains where the others are not present, and this can be very useful.
I agree with Laurent. I mean, I guess use case is definitely one important point. So the way in which the way to make sure that the machinery, the regulatory machinery will work properly, the more we share a use case, the better it is. I mean, we, for example, in EUSAiR, now we are in the piloting phase, so we are simulating sandboxes. with the regulators and with providers. Now we are currently almost 50 use cases ongoing, so a lot of work. And every day when we work with the AI provider, they raise questions. I know, accuracy, what the relationship with the human oversight, and we work on that. And it's exactly the same thing that, for example, NoLeFa is handling, and other projects are handling from different angles, different perspectives. So I guess, so it's very important. By the way, it's important to cooperate and share use cases because some of us work with regulators. So we work with the same authorities, right? NoLeFa and EUSAiR, we are working with exactly the same authorities. We are working also notifying authorities, but also we work on the market surveillance authorities. So it's super important to find a way to share these use cases. That's very important. Otherwise, we are a fragmented effort, right? And the fragmented effort is very bad because we contribute to the fragmentation of the regulatory landscape, which is already fragmented in itself, right?
Sandra? Yes?
Yes. Yeah, I'd love to jump in on the fragmentation of things, because I also think that's a big challenge. I think in general, joining a network and working with other institutions and industry partners is already a great step towards actually coming up with a joint agenda and coming up with a joint strategy, because this exchange of knowledge and experiences is where it starts. I think we need to try and find a way to open this more, so all of the NOEs can share their experiences with each other. I think that would be very beneficial. It could also work to for an institution to join more than one NOE if possible. So you already get a glimpse of what one of the NOEs is doing, what the other one is doing, like from first-hand experience of contributing as well. I think also joint events or aligning and exchanging ideas about where parts of where members of the networks are going, just being aware of which party is part of which network, and trying to just meet in person is also a great idea to connect on just a different level. I love Zoom meetings. They're a great way. This could not happen without Zoom, but also connecting on a personal level is really important. For ELSA, for example, we invited some of the networks that we work together closely with to our General Assembly, which then also gave us a platform to just talk about our experiences as well. And one idea that I had, I'm not quite sure what the researchers in this group think about this, as I'm the communication manager, but I think having a look at the strategic research agendas or the strategy behind the NOEs, and maybe even aligning them a little bit, could be an opportunity. Not double checking with all other NOEs if the strategy is a good idea, but seeing what other NOEs are doing, what's the strategy behind it, and do we have overlapping areas? Could there be synergies? Could there be use cases where NOEs work together on instead of just the network partners? All are great potential opportunities from my humble point of view.
Just if I could add to what Sandra said at the moment, for example, like we have the regulatory frameworks in place, but it's kind of fragmented in nature. Like it's not regularized, or let's say there is an absence of harmonized standards for the emerging AI technologies or the upcoming next generation generative AI tech. So just to, let's say, properly amplify the impact or avoid this kind of fragmented regulatory alliances that we could have. Like a joint policy brief or like a joint standardization brief could really help. I mean, at least the sister projects can come up with a joint policy brief to have a one voice, or like a one unified voice to better tackle this aspect of the fragmentation that we see these days. And of course, like for that matter, we also have the ENFIELD portal, which where we try to engage all other sister projects as well as the stakeholders, and we try to have an alignment of the KPIs or the frameworks that we have put in place, so that the working groups that we are, let's say, involved in can have a common end goal, or let's say we can work towards a common interoperability framework for both the policy and the standardization front. That's all from our side.
Okay, the next question is there a need, which role are for market surveillance authorities in the implementation of the AI Act?
I guess I can start, but I think there are people that are, so here I would distinguish the formal roles. I mean, the formal roles is very much described and stated in the AI regulations, right? So what I can bring is my view from their sandbox perspective. So in sandboxes, market surveillance authorities are required to do something new. Because in sandboxes, in the pre-market phase, you don't have any inspective role. You don't sanction anything. You don't find anything. You are in a pre-market phase. You are in experimentation phase, right? But yet, the market surveillance authorities are required to jointly establish the regulatory sandbox together with notifying authorities. Okay, then you may have different governance models, because you can bring also other authorities, data protection authorities, sectorial authorities, and that's a very important part. How the sectorial authorities can cooperate in the sandboxing. But they have a very important role insofar as they are able in the sandboxes to be supportive to the AI providers and help them understand how to be compliant in the pre-market phase is when you go to a sport driving course held by police, right? You are simulating, you are not on the road, and you learn how to do it, to drive properly with police, but not police as an authority that fines you and sanctions you, right? That's an important part of market surveillance authorities, and that's definitely a challenging issue of the implementation of the AI, but it's crucial, because insofar as the market surveillance authority in the sandboxes are able to do this job, that will be very beneficial for providers, even with low TRL, for example.
May I reflect on this? I think that's definitely important, Antonio. I like that very much. But if we look at this question, which roles have these market surveillance authorities? Does that mean in some ways that on the one side they need to enforce certain compliance? But what I observe especially when we work here really very close to the researchers, to the technology developers, especially in AI, where we discover how knowledge, how intelligence can be really now realized and implemented. That the lack of the surveillance is sometimes significant. And that means the technology is further than we would like to see on the regulation. How can, so that's the second role is that I think these authorities need to be engaged more in the sourcing of these kind of requirements and surveillance needs here in some way. And here, I think the NoES and can be or need to be a vital role in some way. Maybe also let it get a little bit back that the use cases here, I like this because they're very tangible. They are really describing what's ongoing, are the one which needs to be shared and then needs to be managed towards maybe as I said, as I outlined in my presentation, we have on the one side the technical dimension, which typically be in these technological environment can really very good play. But then we have these governance and legal, how we call it, legal frameworks, and on the other side, the standardization frameworks. And already the separation and the interaction needs to be eventually more stipulated, or stimulated here in this way. So that the standards really fit what is needed, and then that the surveillance doesn't rely on standards which are eventually too old already. Maybe a little provocative statement in some way. Or a little bit reflection on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The last question for this morning, is there a need for mutualizing AI assessment platform at national or European level?
Okay.
Maybe I can.
Yeah, go.
Sorry, go on, please.
Okay, it's just a quick one. I mean, there's not a need. It's a requirement from the AI Act. That's part of the articles I'm quoting, 74 and 79 of the AI Act, requiring that when, for instance, an issue has been raised in one of the EU countries, all the other corresponding market surveillance authorities, for instance, are being informed, and that they share the corresponding information, so that the same implementation, unless one of the countries does not agree with the initial test, that the same conditions are being applied all over Europe. So we've got no choice than managing an environment where we can exchange information swiftly and efficiently.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree that with Lauren that it's a complete requirement. Like mutualized platforms are the way to go. Like enabling a shared testing environment for at least for the high risk AI systems, or promoting the cross sector learning, which actually can reduce the duplicated efforts for V&V framework that we try to apply, or let's say at least centralizing the repository for certain benchmarks and standards, be it for the data sets or be it for the policy compliance tools. It really harmonizes the assessment that we might have in line for in accordance to the EU AI Act. Overall, definitely, if we go for this kind of like a shared interactive platform, it can easily strengthen the trust and interoperability, as well as the scalability of the AI assessments that we plan for the high risk AI systems.
If I may, there is a scalability issue. So the fact that, the platform should be available, should be scalable, should be adopted. And look, there is an issue, right? For example, in the sandbox, if you take a look in the implementing act, was just published at the beginning of December, there is an article mentioning how to bring cooperation from notified bodies. Notified bodies are on the market. So here, there is an issue regarding how to make scalable things in a context where you have different stakeholders that are playing in a competitive way on the market. So here, there is an issue. So I can give you the perspective of sandboxing. The sandboxing, we are precisely now considering, and that's a request of the Commission, how, because it's written in the implementing act, which is public consultation at the moment, how to bring notified bodies in the ecosystem of sandbox. It's very difficult because notified bodies should be neutral, right, with respect to the certification process. But still, this is an issue.
Well, our second session is coming to a close. Before we finish, we would like to sincerely thank our speakers and all of you for participating. And we also invite you to join us for our next session, which will take place in February. For more details and updates, please subscribe to our newsletter. And before we go, we will also like to invite you to discover the dAIEDGE Virtual Lab by scanning the QR code. Is here. And thank you once again. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Talia. Just to complement, we will also share all the websites of all the assistants today, NoLeFa, EUSAiR, ELSA, and ENFIELD in dAIEDGE, to all the participants. And if you are interested for more information and to contact these projects, we will make sure that you have the correct contact. With this, thank you all. Thank you for assisting. It was a very good webinar. Thank you.